My math again. We gotta give.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So I realize that a lot of you are going on the international trip. Are y'all leaving Friday or tomorrow? Friday. Okay, so for those of you who aren't going, what are your other classes doing? Are they having class or no?
Accounting canceling.
Accounting's canceled, IT, he's just gonna post videos.
Accounting's canceled? Like, okay, wow. Okay, we are not canceling class. I'll be the odd one out. Y'all can hate me for that, but well, maybe, how about this? Because I realize that this probably only leaves a very small number of you who will be here in person. And so for the online group, just to fill you all in the online group, part of the face-to-face program, a large portion of all these students are going to be gone, leaving just a very small handful of them still here because of whatever commitments they have here. So with that said, what we're going to do, if y'all are okay with this, is I will post Panopto recordings next week. So we won't have actual physical class, but we will have those Panopto recordings of course content. Does that sound okay? Or would you rather come to class? You'd rather watch it in your pajamas and, okay. So I realize these Panopto videos can kind of be boring, right? Because it's hard to have a discussion. You can't really have a discussion with those Panopto recordings, but it is what it is. And so I'll try my best to post those next week. So we can kind of get caught up a little bit with content. And yeah, so we won't have physical class next week. I'll post those recordings. Any questions about that? No? Okay, and then the next week, spring break. So for a lot of you, I won't see you for like 2 weeks. Okay, so holler at me though. If you have questions as you're working on your cases or you're working on your projects, whatever it may be, I am around. I am working over spring break. So while you guys are having fun, yeah, I'll be having fun at work. So just want to let you know that I'm available. So please reach out. That's what I'm here for, to help answer any questions. So with that said, I would like to bring on the Reliance Baking Soda group. So come on down. And then we'll get back into our discussion.
That's on. I feel like that. Yeah.
Thank you for the donuts.
Yes, the donuts. Yes. Well, how did we do on the exam? I know we're all a little on edge after that. I know I am. So just kind of like bear with us right now. We'll try to bring a little life in the room, but.
Are you referring to your accounting exam?
Yes.
Okay, not marketing.
I told you
That
on Friday, there you go. So, we'll kind of wake everybody up here. I would like to run a focus group. So we're doing baking soda today, and I brought in 3 different baking sodas. We can pass these around the room kind of during the case, but I'll put them, I don't know where you guys can see them best at, but we got Arm & Hammer, there's a private label, and do you call this a select label? This is like a niche brand. What would you call this? It's kind
If it's a it might be a manufactured brand. Is the company the manufacturer? Yeah, it's a manufactured brand then.
Manufactured brand. So, let's do a focus group. I'm going to say the word baking soda, and I want people just to kind of shout out what comes to their mind. So, baking soda.
Arm & Hammer.
Arm & Hammer.
Cleaning.
Cleaning, okay.
Skincare.
Skincare.
Mosquito bites.
Is it baking?
Or bee stings.
Bee stings?
Yes.
Okay, that's new. Okay.
I have a story behind that.
Jacob?
Keep your fridge from smelling bad.
I do that too. Okay. Anyone else? Any more words? Okay, so show of hands, how many people here have baking soda in their apartment, their house right now? Okay. How many people think their mom has it at their house? What about their grandma? So you would say baking soda probably has a good household penetration. Like everybody has that item probably in their house. It's a very utilized item. And then what do we think, what do we use it for the most? Just shout it out. What do you think it's used for the most?
Cleaning.
Cleaning? do you say?
Healing.
Healing?
Healing like
Can you elaborate?
bee stings or mouth
Hey, he's
sores.
with me on this, I love it.
So you just put it on the site?
No, you mix it with water into a paste and kind of put it wherever you.
Has anybody ever cleaned their laundry with it? Like use it as like a detergent?
I know some people who make their own detergent with it.
I know that, yeah, and I've used it to clean my dishwasher before. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. Okay, well, thank you for participating in my focus group today. So, we'll come back to these, but honestly, I'll pass these around, and I might come back and ask you guys some more questions. I'm gonna start over here. Kind of look at the labeling and be like, would I buy this for cooking? Would this be more of a cleaning label? Is it a more modular label? And kind of just like think about when you look at this in the store, what does this come across to you? Because interesting enough, when I asked my fiance, I held up the Arm & Hammer and I held up this one. You know, she said this was cute. It had the
Yeah, it
little-
looks
had the little-
girly to me.
the old white guy on it, and it said Bob's Red Mill, and she's like, I would bake with this one, but she said the Arm & Hammer she said she wouldn't bake with, which I thought was interesting. So I'll pass these around and just kind of, apply your MBA skills and kind of tell me what you think about them. Okay, and we're doing a case today, so here's the case. So Reliance Baking Soda, FYI, it's not a real company, but we're gonna roll with it. So this is back in the early 2000s, from 2003 to 2007. So Reliance Baking Soda, kind of give you a frame of reference, it's kind of sort of a Arm & Hammer type brand. They're like 100 years old. They're the mainstream. Everybody knows them. Where's my paper at? And one of their main products is their Reliance Baking Soda. So a couple facts about Reliance Baking Soda. In their personal focus groups, 85% of households that they interviewed said that their product was in their house. This company controls 70% of the baking soda market. They're a very aware brand. Everybody knows about them, kind of like Arm & Hammer, but they have low recall of the product. They don't spend much on advertising. They're not a declining brand. They're very dominant within their company. So there's this woman in our case that she got brought. Her name is Anna Regante. I'm probably saying that name wrong. Maybe I am. But she has been brought in as the new marketing director for Reliance Baking Soda. So she comes in on the tail end of 2007, and she's told for 2008 she has to make 10% profit. I know, I just come up with 10% this year. I know it's got probably a big goal, but so 10% is going to be $2 million. So what our team here has been tasked with is we had to look at the budget, we had to take the data, and we had to figure out where are we going to get $2 million from. So I'm going to pass it off here in a second, let these guys kind of elaborate more on the data, but keep in mind, we need 10%, we need to raise 10%, which is $2 million. How are we going to do that? So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Michael. I always forget all the slides, sorry.
Okay, so I was tasked with looking at the SWOT analysis of baking soda and specifically Reliance Baking. So one of the things we looked at when we saw with Reliance Baking is that, as Boone stated before, that it is 70% market share within that baking soda category. And there's a 95% unaided brand recall. And the thing about this that we wanted to point out was the fact that as a proxy for our company, because it is fake, it is we're using Arm & Hammer, hence why we have the box. And these stats line up very, very closely with Arm & Hammer themselves. So it's a good kind of real world example of what Reliance Baking would be like there. And then one of the other strengths we have with the baking soda product itself is the fact that it is multi-purpose. As I stated in the slides, baking, cleaning, bee stings, healing, anything that you can think of, really, it can be used for. And then just a little note is that half of all users that have baking soda do apply them in more than one manner. So that is just a little kind of interesting fact. And then the customer behavior, because it is a established and mature market and it's inexpensive, there's really kind of low risk when it comes to looking at switching costs and other things. There are some that I'll touch on in just a minute. But it's generally a low risk product for the consumer itself when they buy it. So as for our weaknesses, that Gardner will look at here in a little bit with the financials, the advertising effectiveness that we have is not great. It's only about a 20% actual advertising recall. When consumers were asked if they could recall seeing a RBS, Reliance Baking Soda advertisement in the previous week or so. So we're currently spending a lot of money, as Gardner will touch on, not a lot of awareness, and it's not looking great for us. And this is a potential for an opportunity. And then also we have a promotional reliance. So a lot of people are waiting for a promotion to purchase our product, and what ends up happening is they purchase 5 bags of baking soda, and then they go, however long. So what ends up happening is it doesn't allow our revenue cycle to be, stable, and it has fluctuations within those. And then obviously with the category maturity, it's baking soda. Everyone kind of buys it. There's not much potential for growth or natural growth in the market itself. So we have to find ways to combat that. So for opportunities, the first thing that we wanted to look at was how can we let our customers know how we can expand their usage, how they can get more out of the product that is currently sitting on their shelves that for what they think is just for baking or for cleaning. So the next thing is the promotion optimization. We want to make sure we eliminate those low return on investment promotions and allow for more marketable and more successful promotions over the course of the year. And then really just the trade promotion efficiency, kind of shifting towards more incentives for these trade shows and trying to improve our in-store support when it comes to advertising on the aisles or in the end caps or whatever it may be. And then for our threats, private label. Private label is a lot cheaper. I'm not sure how many of y'all choose to buy a private label versus a name brand. But according to our case, the name brand, the private label price was about 30% cheaper, and 30% adds up a lot whenever you start buying a lot of private label stuff. And because of that price gap really encourages switching for the consumer, and it kind of gears more towards those price-sensitive customers. And then the other main one is a product substitution. Because baking soda has this wide variety of uses, not many people are really aware of it. And so people will go out and go buy specifically soap, shampoo, Afterbite, really anything just to replace, or that is replacing what could be our marketing value and our product value. So yeah, that was the main threats that we established. I'm going to pass it off to Gardner to go over the financials.
Thank you, Michael. I looked at the consumer the financials and performance related to the promotion events. There were 2 promotion events. There was a consumer and a trade. For the consumer promotion performance, we did 4 consumer promotion events in 2006. We did in January a multi-brand refund, April a cross-ref coupon, and if y'all don't know what that is, it's when you buy a product. Usually you see this with cereal. It might have the coupon on the side of the box. You have to cut it out and send it in. June, we did a twin pack plus a refund. In September, a magazine supplement plus a sweepstakes. Total spending was $1,080,000 with a total incremental contribution of $198,000 with an average ROI of 18%. The individual ROI results, January's refund was 16%. April's coupon was 13%, which was the lowest return that we had. The June twin pack was at 20%, and the September magazine plus sweepstakes was at 24%, and that was our highest return. Because baking soda demand is stable year-round, many of these promotions likely shift purchase timing rather than increase the total consumption. And overusing coupons in a category already viewed as inexpensive could make consumers more price sensitive over time. And that's what we found with the consumer promotions. These are our financials for the 4 promotions. January, you can see April, June, September, and then as underneath that, the total consumer promotions, and then the total trade promotions. Trade promotions overview, total spending was $5.94 million, the total incremental contribution of $1.35 million, and an average ROI of 23%. Performance related to it, we had a higher ROI than the consumer promotion, 23% versus 18%. Generated significantly more total profits in dollars. Strategic concerns, there was a heavy dependence on trade discounts and long-term reliance on that, on off-invoice discounts may train retailers to expect deals which will weaken the pricing discipline. Other strategic concerns: encourages forward buying by retailers, reduces full price sales, and risks weakening long-term pricing disciplines. We found that while trade promotions produce stronger short-term results, they may create structural marginal risk if overused. Now I'm going to pass it over to John.
All right, so we just heard a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of baking soda, baking. So what does this all mean, right? So let's bring it all back to the central question. We have to increase profit by 10% this next year without eroding brand image. So up $2 million, still relevant, people still like us and care about us, right? So we need to remember that the usage extends far beyond simply baking, as we all mentioned in our focus group. Many utilize it as a healthy option for cleaning, washing, deodorizing, or laundry, as we mentioned before, and it's a natural and healthy alternative to toxic cleaning chemicals, right? So the first, we have a two-pronged strategy. Two-pronged strategy. First prong of our strategy highlights all these facts that we have mentioned before, right? Baking soda is in a mature, stable market. So one of the only few ways that we can increase our profit is to increase sales through increased demand. How do we do this, right? So what we're going to do, and this is the big thing, right? This is our big selling point. We have a new advertising strategy. We're not going to change our advertising budget. We're keeping the same advertising budget, just changing the way we do things. So what we're going to do with this new advertising strategy is highlight the versatility of baking soda. Highlight all those things that we in 2026 know to be true about baking soda, which they might not have in 2006, 2007, when this case is set. So with this new advertising highlighting the versatility of baking soda, we estimate with this new rejuvenated demand, an increase in profit of at least $1 million. We're tugging at those consumers who only use baking soda for baking, which is quite a few. So with that new increased demand, as I said, plus $1 million in profit. The other thing we're going to do is, since we have a lot of inefficiencies with our promotions, we're going to slightly cut our promotions, but we're going to think about it and do it in a proper way. So since our trade promotions are highly inefficient and cannibalizing our normal sales, or what would be our normal sales, what we're going to do is cut that by 15% just to force it to become more efficient. Nothing else. We still want to do it. It's doing great things. The other thing we're going to do is cut consumer promotions by 30%. As we've seen before, consumer promotions don't really have an effect on the consumer too much. Not that great. So what this also does is it reduces the promotion overlap with the trade promotions. And after all that, this has an added benefit of saving almost $1 million, which is $991,000. All of that being said, none of what we have recommended to you today, or what we have shown you, this two-pronged strategy, erodes the brand reputation. We're maintaining our brand reputation. That being said, that concludes our presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Great. What questions do y'all have for them? I have some questions, but some of them are going to be more posed to the overall class too. So first off, if we go back to your last slide that talks about your plan here, your suggested plan. So if we're talking about a new advertising strategy and we're getting our current customers to buy more, right? We're showing the versatility of how they can use this product in multiple different ways. Going back to the product market matrix, what type of strategy is this? Potential exam question. It's usually the easiest way to generate cash.
Sales.
Market penetration.
Penetration, yes. Okay, good job. Market penetration. So think about that, y'all, as you develop these strategies, that matrix we talked about. And now I want to shift gears. And first off, kudos to this team for doing the math correctly. So if you look at their ROI calculations, if you don't know how they got those calculations, figure that out because that will likely be on an exam. So make sure you know how to do those, okay? So in looking at those calculations, you can see that trade was much more effective than consumer promotions, which aligns with kind of where they're suggesting to cut are these different percentages here. How do you think your trade partners will react to this cut in trade promotions? And we'll start there.
Are you asking us?
Yes.
I think they won't be happy about it because I guess you could say we realized a pattern that they were taking advantage of. I mean, that could hurt their bottom line if they've been taking advantage of that pattern in order to secure discounts or things like that. So I don't think they'll be happy.
Now, what about your salespeople? How are your salespeople compensated?
Off of performance, like
Performance
sales,
based on what?
sales.
Sales volume, not profit, okay? So this is a tricky one. Here you've got these B2B buyers or sellers who are compensated based on volume sold, not profit. So do they like the trade promotions?
So they're not gonna like it, but our counter argument to them is we have a stable sale, this is a household staple. We are the brand, think Arm & Hammer, we are the brand in the US and it's stable demand year round. So at the end of the day, there still will be those sales. We're just making the sales more efficient, the promotions more efficient, so we're not cannibalizing our normal sales on trade promotions.
And you can always adjust the compensation strategy. Like that's always, this is, from a sales perspective, later this semester we'll have Fred Blatchford in here. And he was a VP of sales for Johnson & Johnson, probably with them for over 25 years. And sales performance plans and compensation plans, they are incredibly tricky to manage. And territory plans too. It is a science. And so that is one of the challenges I think with this case is that I think this case is a really good example of how in marketing, there's not always one correct answer. And you have to think about your company, right? Your internal issues with your company, your customers, your salespeople, your supply chain partners or your retailers here. And so a lot kind of needs to be considered when you're making a substantial change like this. And yeah, tough conversations. And one change like this in terms of your promotion strategy can lead to a host of changes in other strategies that a company uses, such as compensation. What other questions do y'all have for them? I've been talking too much. You want feedback on your,
I've got a question for the class.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we had a chance to look at all three of them. We all did? Okay. So they're all 1 pound. They're all sodium bicarbonate, NaCH, whatever. What did we think about them? What did we think? Which one would you bake with? This one?
Yeah.
Why?
It has a bunch of baked goods listed on it.
But it's the same as this.
It does say gluten free.
You wouldn't make cookies with this? Oh, this, is it really?
Yeah.
There's even a recipe.
There's never been gluten associated with sodium bicarbonate, which is interesting. Okay, so we would bake with this, but would you clean your bathroom with this?
No.
Why? It's the same as this.
Yeah, but I would be buying it to bake with, so even if you buy something that can do something different, if you buy, I bought a laptop before for school, even though it games on it, I bought it for school, so the point is for me to do spreadsheets on it.
Interesting. It's just interesting here, like I said, this is all the same product, but the fun part is, now we talk about the pricing on it, right? So.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
So the hammer, when
Yes.
I think hammer, I think strength,
Yeah.
it's durable, it's gonna crush whatever I need done,
Yeah.
So that's why I associate that more so with cleaning.
Yeah. very modular, isn't it?
than the others, yeah.
This is kind of what, when our two-pronged strategy, this is kind of what we were going for, a very modular product that kind of would be more house modular for everything in the house. And, on the back, there's trash, there's pets, there's deodorizers, there's everything on this. But, so we said in the case that the private label is 30 cents cheaper, 30%. So in real life, this is $1.60. This is $1. So there's 60 cents difference here. And then the same product for £1. You guys want to guess how much this one is? I have the receipt.
Double. I guess double.
A little bit more.
Triple.
This is $4.80.
Makes sense.
So you can bake your cookies with the one that's 3 times more. I don't know, I thought it was very interesting how labeling works, and the marketing behind it. So anyways, thank you for participating in our focus group and listening to our case today.
I think you all should bake cookies using the same recipe
Yes.
with different baking sodas and see if you taste a difference.
Does anybody need baking soda? I have 3 pounds of it now.
Baking soda.
You do?
Yeah.
Which one do you want?
I want the fancy one.
Okay, well, you can have it. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, great job, guys.
Kind of donation. We use it quite frequently.
Fun, great job. So a couple other things I want to mention is, in the case, they mention, pull versus push strategies. Are you all familiar with what they mean by that? No? Okay, so I'll briefly mention it. We'll talk about it again when we get back to the marketing program, because I'm sure it's in your textbook. But a pull versus push strategy really talks about the difference in terms of who the marketer is trying to reach. So a pull strategy is when marketers are trying to get the product pulled through the supply chain. So you target the end consumer, and it's the hope that the end consumer is going to pull it or buy it from the retailer or request the product, and then it essentially gets pulled from there. So, typically with consumer packaged goods, they're targeted at the end consumer. Even if you think about medicines, when you listen to commercials for medications, what do they say? Talk to your doctor, right? And so they're trying to get the end user to have the patient talk to their doctor. Well, what about XYZ, whatever this medication is, and then have the doctor prescribe that medication. So that's a pull strategy. A push strategy is what we think of when we think about trade promotions. And so here it's things like pushing your promotions onto the trade, and so giving them discounts, whatever it may be. The case does a great job talking about different types of trade promotions. And so, getting the trade to buy the product and pass that along to the retailer, and the retailer, shows it, and ultimately the end consumer sees it on end caps or on shelves and ends up buying it. And so that's kind of how, if you think about new flavors of Cheerios, I recently saw one the other day at the grocery store. It was like a protein flavor or protein type of Cheerios. Has anyone tried it? Well, I bought it. My kids are eating it, so can't be too bad. But, I haven't seen commercials for a protein Cheerio, advertised, but yet it's on store shelves. So likely trade promotions were involved there. What else did I want to mention? One other thing I wanted to mention too is unaided brand awareness. So the group touched on it. And what unaided brand awareness means is, if you look back at the end of the case and it said, what were the numbers there? Was it 75 or 95 or?
It was,
It's really high.
yeah, it was like 85% unaided brand awareness, and then, yeah.
So a very, very high measure. And so what that means, what an unaided brand awareness measure means, is that if I were to just ask you, what brands of baking soda are you aware of? It's like free recall, right? And you tell me all the brands that you're aware of. That is unaided brand awareness. Aided brand awareness is when, let's say, I show you a list of brands. And so on there would be Reliance Baking Soda, along with a bunch of other brands, and you might have some, not only baking soda brands on there, you might have some miscellaneous, fictitious, other brands on there too, because that can kind of help you gauge how accurate people are in their recall. And so you might have some other non-baking soda brands in that list, and you ask people, showing them that list, what brands of baking soda are you aware of? That is an aided recall. Now, there are some arguments to both types of measures. So some researchers and marketers would say that aided recall is better. Why do you think they would argue that aided recall? So think of a list of brand names and I ask you, what are you aware of? What might be the argument for why that is a better measure of brand awareness?
That's probably a question which you'll get in the real world. You're not gonna be just arbitrarily going, all right, what's a baking soda brand? You're looking at the baking soda aisle.
So you said it's more in line with the real world, like so how you shop,
Yeah.
right? Because when you shop, you're exposed to the packaging, the brand names, those cues, which likely might have triggered a memory to you to say, oh yeah, I remember seeing that ad or I've heard of that brand, right? So the argument there is that sometimes it's more aligned with the shopping experience in that people see the brands all on the shelves or they see the colors, the logos, and that can trigger memory. Others might say that recall is better or unaided awareness. And why? What would be the argument there?
Because then it shows the strength of your brand. If you can just say, you know, if you say, I want soda, tell me a soda brand, and everyone in the room can say Coca-Cola, that means you're top of mind for your product category versus having to be like, well, here are all the options for sodas. And it's like, oh, I guess RC does make a cola.
Yep.
I should consider them. But if, you know, top of mind means when someone shows up without having to be advertised to, they think, all right, I need baking soda, I'm gonna go grab Arm & Hammer.
Yeah. So the strength of that memory. Yep. So the kind of brand strength measure too. Yeah. So that would be the argument for the recall or the unaided, is how large of an impression has your brand really made? Okay. So there are benefits to doing both, but you see companies use both of them too. So I wanted to end there with a case, but it's a very, very interesting case. But again, great job to that team, and make sure you, if you can, follow along with how they did their math. Now, I did want to talk about a couple other things before we move forward with content. One is a couple of weeks ago, was it last week, when we were talking about information search, I made a comment about how AI is really changing how consumers search for information and even how consumers might be making choices and even not making choices. They might have a bot make the consumption or decision for them. And so there's this article I posted on Canvas. I hope you all can read it. If you have some access issues, let me know. But there were a couple of things I wanted to point out about this article. Is that, you know, it says for one issue is how consumers are searching for information, and the other is about who's making the purchasing decision. And so the article goes on to talk about why, you know, for one, with these AI, with consumers using AI in, let's say, product search, it is often only presenting consumers with a subset of brands available that address the customer's question. So as a brand, you need to know, are you in that output, whatever is getting generated through AI? And I want to give you an example. So probably by the end of this year, I'm going to have to buy a new vehicle. And I prefer a mid-size SUV over a full-size SUV because I don't know why. I feel really uncomfortable driving a full-size SUV. My husband's always had trucks. I hate driving it, well, I don't mind driving the truck. I hate parking the truck. And I also hate driving through, like drive-throughs with it. I've hit a cone at Chick-fil-A once before with it. Thank goodness it was a cone and it didn't do any damage, but I rather would just a mid-size SUV. So you guys can pull out your cell phones if you want, and we can go along with this. But I asked ChatGPT, what are the best, I don't even know if I have my phone, here it is. What are the best mid-size SUVs for tall drivers? Okay, my husband's about 6'6". He's pretty tall. So this is another reason why he wants a full size. Because if we were to switch who's driving, he wants it comfortable for him. And if you guys want to do that too, I'm curious to see if you get different results. So yeah, I asked, let's see here. So my exact words were, what mid-size SUV is the best for tall drivers? Okay. And if you do it, let me know which brands you get.
You said mid-size or full size?
Mid-size. I don't want to be driving a bus. Okay, so you have Ford Bronco. Any others?
Kia Telluride.
Okay.
Jeep Wrangler.
It doesn't let me draw on this. Okay.
Toyota Highlander.
Okay, so you're getting the Bronco, the Telluride. Which other ones did you guys get? Someone said Highlander. That showed up in mine too.
Pathfinder.
Okay.
Chevy Traverse.
Traverse.
Audi Q5.
Okay. Okay, we'll stop there. Okay. Mine were similar. I got, besides the ones you mentioned here, I've got a Honda Palisade, a Subaru Accent, I don't know what that is, and a Honda Pilot. Okay. Okay, so those, anyone else have any other brands? Okay. Now, does it give you head and legroom dimensions on these vehicles? Does any of
Yes, on some of them.
on some of them? Okay, so let's just pick the top three here. Okay, so the Bronco, this one says headroom. Oh wait, okay, we'll do headroom first. So this one says 43.3 and legroom of 43.1. What about the Telluride? Anyone have anything there? Okay, this one says 40.9 and 41. 41.4. Highlander, who's got the Highlander? It didn't show up in mine. Anybody want to search the head and legroom?
The Highlander.
Yep.
41.2 inches headroom, and legroom is 42 inches.
Okay. Now, we'll just stop there. What are the head and legroom dimensions for a Ford Explorer? So the Ford Explorer has a 40.7, so a little lower on the headroom, but 43 on the legroom. So it outbeats the Telluride and the Highlander. And so it's not even showing up in ChatGPT's output. So as a brand, like I would argue, I don't even know what's better. Headroom, legroom for a tall driver. Someone that's 6'6". What's better? Anyone know? I don't know.
It depends on.
And torso, right? So I would think, just considering my husband, that legroom would be more important. And so I'm shocked, like that Ford, yes, they have their Bronco here. But the Explorer is not showing up at all, even though it outbeats some of these others in dimensions. And I didn't even pull up, yeah, some of them were actually lower, much lower than Ford. But anyhow, this is a problem for Ford. Like that your brand isn't going to be part of a consumer's consideration set because it's not even showing up. And so consumers, as they use these different AI platforms, it's really shaping consumers' consideration sets. And so brands need to think about, how do we even make content that's going to populate and show up as consumers ask questions, whether it's, Gemini or ChatGPT, whatever it may be. And so the article talks about how, really what's happening is that for some websites, brands are not seeing traffic like they used to because people aren't clicking on the links like normally when they would, search for a particular product or something of the sort. And instead, they're just looking at what the chatbot has saying. But they said that it really depends. Some brands where they've built more of an emotional connection with the customer aren't really seeing as much declines in web traffic. So it talked about how the difference is really coming down to purpose. So this company, StatFlow, has really noticed a decline, and they argue it's because people go to that website for information. Where when people go to Reddit, they go for community, for discussion, for interaction, that sort of social need we talked about before, which the chatbots can't give them. And so they talk about how brands really should be trying to demonstrate how they're different and build sort of that emotional connection and experience so basically customers are still accessing their website. Again, I sometimes refer to this as answer engine optimization because typically you're asking a chatbot questions. Some refer to this as generative engine optimization. But really for a marketer, what it means is really rethinking your content strategy. You need to be thinking about how most websites are designed for consumers as humans. And we are, yes, we look at some content, like in terms of text, but we also look a lot at pictures, right? And what things look like, how visually pleasing do they look to us? Whereas chatbots really are functioning based on structured data. And so marketers really need to think about their content strategy so that it can be processed, both by a human and by a chatbot and show up in these little queries that consumers use. Now, the second issue it also talked about is bots as customers. And so it gives the example here that says to their AI assistant, I need a new laptop for work. My budget is $2,000. I care about battery life and display quality. Order it for me. And then the chatbot does it. This is happening to a lower degree, but it's forecasted to continue to increase. Okay. So again, it gets back to, as a marketer, you've got to understand how these bots are making decisions. And so what we've talked about before in this class is like, okay, so much work in psychology has been drawn upon to understand how customers make decisions, which we've been talking about with last week and what we'll talk about today. But really, this is becoming, a big issue is if we don't have people making these decisions and we have bots making the decisions, how do we as marketers align our brand so that we are what is decided on, that we are chosen. And I think it's really interesting. So they talk a lot about like structured data, and they give some tips in terms of website design and whatnot. But I think what's really interesting in this, they talk about how AI agents have decision effects. So here, it really depends on which agent's being used and what brand's going to be selected. And so that's why I wanted you to tell me what brands showed up in yours. Because here it says, for instance, that these AI agents, they like what's shown to them in the top row on a website. And what's interesting to me is like ChatGPT favors that first position, Claude favors the middle, and Gemini favors the right side. And so as a retailer trying to figure that out, which one your customers are using, product placement becomes potentially even a bigger deal. But it's really interesting. It later goes on to talk about how these bots might be behaving more rationally than we as consumers. But still, there's biases involved. Like it talks about how there's an AI bias that AI systems like AI generated content better. So if you have a bot, it's going to evaluate any sort of web content that's AI generated better than any sort of consumer produced content, most likely. So really, really, really interesting to see how this will unfold. And so it gives some recommendations for marketers and really, think ahead and try to understand this and plan your content. Because this is an evolving issue.
How long do you think it'll take until people start trying to sponsor, like pay for advertisements on like chatbots?
Oh, advertising is coming. Like it talks about it in here a little bit with ChatGPT. They've got to have advertising in feeds in order to continue to provide a free service for so many people. So advertising is coming to ChatGPT. It says that they're not going to be selectively showing recommendations, but who's to believe that? You know what I mean? Like, if it's hard to say. Ethics are going to be tough on this. Yep.
Did you see the Anthropic Super Bowl ad?
Yes,
Against,
that says something about we're not
ChatGPT.
having advertising or something.
Yeah,
What
I
was
thought
that
it was so good. It's like the guy's working out, and then ChatGPT is like, "That's a good and achievable goal," and then he like ends up having an ad. That was the best one. But
Yeah.
anyways, I just didn't.
Yeah,
see.
so this might be a point of differentiation between the brands, but then, how do you remain profitable if you're giving all this free stuff? But anyhow, we'll see. But it's very, very much an evolving world right now. But it is having a huge impact on marketing. And definitely when we talk about how customers make decisions, this was most certainly relevant. So if you have time, I'd say read it. I think it's great. Just got published, I think, yesterday or the day before. So very, very new. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention too is I saw in the news last night, they were talking about this Emblem Health lawsuit. Have you guys heard about this at all? No? Okay. So this lawsuit, I haven't read whatever is summarized here, but this lawsuit basically accuses the company, this Emblem Healthcare, for having this ghost network of providers. And do you guys know what a ghost network is? So it's like, let's say, like I have Blue Cross Blue Shield for health insurance. I go to an in-network provider. I could log on to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and let's say I needed to find, an eye doctor, and it could tell me all the eye doctors that are in network under my plan, right? So a ghost network would be, there's different ways to think of it, but like a ghost network would be something like you show customers a list of in-network providers, but on that list, there might be a lot of retired physicians who are no longer practicing. It might include physicians that are not accepting new patients. It might actually include physicians that aren't in network. And so this company, and let me see if there's any others. What did I have? Outdated list, retired, not accepting, not actually a network. So think of it as a fictitious network. So anyhow, this company, Emblem Health, was accused of having this ghost network. And I was listening to the story last night, and it reminded me of when we were talking about how customers make decisions. And I could see this happening. If you remember back when we talked about the simple additive rule, about how people sometimes make decisions based on seeing this long list of features and thinking, oh, it must be good or it must be better. And this was what was trying to be portrayed in this Samsung ad. I think the same thing was happening with Emblem Health, is that these patients saw, oh man, it has a long list of providers, I'll be able to get the services that I need, but come to find out they couldn't. And so I believe that the company is settling for what, I think it was $2.5 million, but then paying restitution as well. Because ultimately the people who wanted to see a physician or a mental health provider had to pay out of pocket and just incur so much cost. But very interesting, but I thought that it might be a good example of the simple additive rule at work, and that this long list of what's referred to as a ghost network, which wasn't real, really drove some customer decisions. Okay, so let's continue on. So we were talking about different ways customers make decisions. And so we talked about compensatory models where negative features or attributes can be made up by stronger performance on other attributes. Well, marketers don't envision that customers are actually doing the math, which is articulated here. But what we do envision is that people are going to think of some attributes as being more important than others. And so we need to understand how important, first off, what attributes are being evaluated and how important are these attributes? How does our brand perform along these attributes? And how do other brands, which consumers are considering, perform as well? And so this is one attempt of making a more rational choice to choose the brand that performs the best across all the different attributes, depending on the importance of that attribute. And so in this case, the consumer would purchase, a Ford F-150. And we talked about what does this mean for marketers. We should capitalize on the relative advantage. We should show customers, hey, this is important and we do best at it. Use that in our communications, our packaging. We should strengthen any perceived linkages where customers don't see us as performing well. Show them how we actually perform well on that. Change that rating, okay, over here, Also, we could add new attributes and demonstrate how new attributes are important. And we also could do comparative advertising too, to show that really we are better than competitors, particularly along the attributes that matter. And so these are, I guess, again, just more approaches customers might take to really show, like, hey, a compensatory strategy is the best, it's worth the price, or, oh, these features don't matter, this is what's really important. And also a placement approach in store, comparing, showing your product in a more favorable light compared to others. Now, this sort of process, this compensatory process, it's a high effort decision. Okay. It requires effort on the consumer's behalf, and we know that we as consumers oftentimes don't put a lot of effort into our decision making. So these sort of decisions are typically used when there's a high amount of risk. Okay, we talked about the different types of risk. Financially expensive, and it's really relevant or meaningful to the customer. It's something they care about, okay, because they're gonna put a lot of time and effort into that decision. Now, there also are some other non-compensatory rules. So non-compensatory means that performance cannot be made up. And typically what happens when consumers use these set of decision rules is that the consumer has some like baseline criteria that must be met. So for me, a baseline criteria that must be met is my husband has to fit in that front seat. If he doesn't fit in the front seat, it's gone. It's not in my consideration set. And so that's a non-compensatory decision rule. Nothing can make up for it. Okay. This might be used, for instance, in medical practice, like the doctor must have experience in dealing with a certain healthcare condition. I'm only seeing an expert who has dealt with this healthcare problem before. Okay? If he or she hasn't, not using him or her. So oftentimes we see non-compensatory rules at play when consumers have really strict criteria. We also see them sometimes used when we're talking about more habitual or emotional decisions. So decisions that we make kind of out of habit or decisions that are based on our emotional state. Now here are a couple of rules that consumers might apply. There are even more than those listed here, but these are some popular ones. So one is the lexicographic rule. This means that the consumer is going to choose the attribute, or they're going to choose the brand that performs the best on the most important attribute. So in my personal situation, if the ability of my husband fitting in the front seat is the most important attribute, I'm going to be looking at how comfortable he is and, you know, if he can fit and not have to like crunch, okay, it's going to be the brand where he fits the best. Okay, and that's who I choose. Now in this case, again, these numbers are all just sort of fictitious, but if price is the most important, this customer is going to choose either a Ford or a Subaru. Whatever brand performs the best on price. Now, when there is a tie, like in this case there's a tie, what often happens is the customer will move to the next most important attribute, storage capacity, and choose the brand that performs best there. So in this case, it would be an F-150. Okay. So a lexicographic rule means that the customer is choosing a brand that performs the best on the most important attribute. Now, there is another rule that might be important and used is the eliminations by aspects rule. Now, this means that the buyer, again, starts with the most important attribute, but generally has cutoff values. So that if it doesn't meet a cutoff, it's not considered. Now, for the example, I simplified this and created it as, okay, everything must be good, and that's considered a 2. In the real world, okay, what would happen is that these cutoffs are actually going to be a little more descriptive and meaningful. So like the cutoff might be price. The vehicle must be under $45,000. Okay? So rather than good, think less than $45,000. Storage capacity. The cutoff might be something like must fit 4 full-size checked bags or like luggage, right? Suitcases. Family-oriented. Must fit what? A family of 4 or a family of 6. Style. Okay? It must look like a luxury vehicle or it must look like a sports utility vehicle, right? So these, while I have good here for the example, usually become much more descriptive in nature in terms of how they're applied by customers. And so with the elimination by aspects rule, again, if I'm just following this example and must be good, meaning it must be a 2, I'm gonna be looking at, in this case, a Ford or a Subaru. And again, I would start with the most important attribute and work my way down. So if storage capacity is something like it must fit 4 suitcases, well, a Ford can and Subaru can't. So notice that with both of these approaches, the Lexico and the elimination by aspects, we're ruling brands out, right away. We're not considering them at all because they cannot make up for the failure on price or the failure on storage capacity. And so that's what makes it a non-compensatory approach to decision making. So in marketing, what we sometimes do is we'll see that marketers will try to switch customers to using a non-compensatory approach. So we'll say things like, this is the only thing that's important and we perform the best at it. When it comes to vehicles, I often think of Subaru because Subaru's commercials are all about what?
Outdoor traveling, or not traveling.
Safety. Yeah, I think Subaru is all about safety. And so I think their commercials, I haven't seen one of their commercials in a while, but they do a good job of showing like, hey, safety's what's important. It's what matters. Status, luxury, those things, not really relevant if you don't have the people. So, and so I think they've done a good job as trying to focus on that. So you sometimes will see, so that's the only thing that's important and we perform the best at it, or influence important. So try to change what people evaluate as important. Okay, so it's not price that matters, it's safety that matters. Or it's miles per gallon that matters. And then show how their brand really excels on that particular feature. Any questions about that? Hopefully you're learning a little bit about how you yourself might make some decisions. So when we talk about decision making, we can say that yes, there are some very cognitive decisions we make, whether we're talking compensatory, some extent with non-compensatory, there's some cognition involved. But also, we are oftentimes not giving a lot of thought to the decisions that we make. Okay, we live in a world where it's almost like choice overload. And to me, shopping online, it can be overwhelming, right? Because there's too many choices out there. And so a lot of times consumers look to making decisions using shortcuts or based out of habit. And so that's what leads us into what we refer to as habitual decision making. And so habitual decision making can be based on routine, so like out of habit. And some say, it's an inertia-based decision, so you're buying this brand because it's the brand that I've always bought. If we're thinking about cleaning products, not too long ago I bought a Fresh for my washing machine, and why I buy it is because it's the brand I've always bought. I don't even know if there's another brand on the market for cleaning your washing machine. But that to me is an example of inertia. I'm buying something I've always bought and I'm not really changing my routine. I'm not looking at other brands. Don't really care that much about it, so in the cart it goes. Now, some would argue that brand loyalty is a little bit different. Yes, it's habitual, but there is some cognitive effort in the sense that you have deep-seated feelings towards a particular brand, and if your brand is not available, you will likely wait to make that purchase. And so while both are somewhat habitual, they are a little bit different in that more thought is put into decisions that are based on brand loyalty. So what happens with habitual decision making is there's oftentimes limited external search, meaning that when we go back to looking at how consumers are searching for information, whether it's internal based on their memory or external based on any of these different types of search processes with habitual decision making, which I would argue is the majority of our decision making, we're not really looking at too much information. And so instead, we're operating based on our current state and our current environment. And our current environment can greatly affect our decisions. And there is a whole body of literature based on priming, getting people in a certain state, and by getting them in that state, it's going to influence their decision. I'll give you a couple of examples. So for one, products. Okay, when do you think products are perceived as more comforting? When they're displayed on carpet or when they're displayed on a solid tile surface? Think about when they're merchandised. Carpet. Okay, so oddly, there's perceptions of comfort that vary based on the floor type. Another example is the default bias. If you, let's just say, sign up for your new driver's license, and you gotta renew your license, and they ask if you want to be an organ donor. If the default is set to, okay, in which case, so think about you're renewing your driver's license, it's asking you if you wanna be an organ donor. If the default is set to no, or the default is set to yes, in which of these two cases will more people be an organ donor?
Default is yes.
When the default is yes, okay? And so, yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna add, not a context, but we offer 401k, and a couple of years ago, they changed it from an opt-in to an opt-out. And the amount of people that we had when it was just an opt-in, it was like a quarter of what it is now, because people don't realize it's a by default, it's an opt-out, so they have to go out and do it themselves. And it's just the amount of people we have on our 401k platform right now is insanely high.
Yes, so changing the default to being an opt-in, or I guess, yeah, you're automatically in, and you've got to opt out. That's more work on the customer. We oftentimes think the default is correct. And so that's what marketers set as the default. Think about, when you sign up to be on our mailing list, or you opt in to share your email with them, right? So customers tend to do whatever that default is, okay? So that can have a huge impact on decision making. Another one, a fun one I wanted to give you, and I got to pull up my notes because I was reading this one. There's relatively some new research coming out on scents and color choices. So, oh shoot, maybe I don't have it. So I'll just go based off of memory here. But what this research was saying is that, oh, here it is. Okay. What this research was saying is that the scents that are pumped into stores, okay, and it happens all the time. Like, companies can have signature scents. Have you ever walked into the Auburn University Hotel? No? Oh, you guys should go there. You'll definitely notice some scents when you walk in there. Nike stores have scents pumped into them. Some grocery stores have scents pumped into them. It's this whole area of sensory marketing. And so what this research was looking at is how different types of scents impact color choice. And it's color choice not necessarily for a scented product. Like you could think of like buying a water bottle or buying anything that has color on it. And so what the research showed is that if you have cool scented environments, so think about pumping your shopping or your store with mint, with lavender, with eucalyptus. What they showed is that when those scents are present in a store, purchases of blue and green products go up. Okay, so the color of the merchandise, what gets selected, changes. And so because the products appear cooler, cleaner, and more refreshing. And so it talked about how there's these cross-modal correspondences between what we see visually and what we smell. And so we're more likely to choose products that align essentially with what we're smelling. And so what they said though is for warm scents, oftentimes the warm scents like caramel, coffee, cinnamon, they oftentimes suggest like a more intimate feeling or a more intimate atmosphere, and they oftentimes signal luxury. And so consumers will tend to purchase, colors that are more aligned with warmer, richer, more intimate sort of color palettes. So think like reds, yellows, browns. And so again, I thought that was really interesting, but it could be very, very useful if you're trying to get rid of certain colors. If you're overstocked or you bought too much of a certain color, it would be interesting to see if changing the scent of your store shifted consumers to buy, those additional colors or items that you're trying to get rid of.
For a store like Bath and Body Works, which is just like overstimulating as all it can be.
Yeah.
Between all the smells, the sights, the whatever, how do they incorporate that? Or either the carpet or the positioning, I don't know, how would they influence customers?
Bath and Body Works, they said they're gonna stop or reduce their amount of promotions for one this year. We'll see how they perform with that strategy, because I think so many of their customers are trained based on their promotions. But I think with Bath and Body Works, like they're known for their scents, right? So it's when you walk in that store, you can't really just smell one scent. I feel like you just smell all sorts of scents. And so to me, what they do really well on is what I think encourages people to buy some scents versus others is the limited edition. Like right now, I believe they have the Disney Princess. Anybody know, right? The Disney Princess scents right now. They sold out of those real quickly last year. I'm really curious if it will be effective for them this year as well. So in terms of scents for them, and I know they're merging into more, they now offer like car scents. Did you know that? Scents for your car? I did not buy them. But I think they're merging into different categories. I also think they're constantly running promotions. So that's the thing that I really am curious about and want to watch. But it's hard for their scent marketing. I think they put a lot of work into thinking about what the scent is and aligning their packaging or if you think about the colors used, the color of the candle, the display or what the candle container looks like, they do a lot of research and put a lot of thought into that design. So, great question. Anyone else shop highly at Bath and Body Works? No? Yes? A little bit? Yes and no? Yeah. So, that brand's been pretty successful. They're a really interesting story. If you think back to, don't do this on me. They have done a lot of store redesigns over the years. So I don't know if you remember, but they used to be like a country farmhouse look. You guys remember that or no? And then they shifted to be more, I know you guys don't know. Okay. Let's see. Oh, see? I don't even know. Okay, this one right here, bottom right. So they're actually a fairly well-performing company because they used to be part of the Victoria's Secret brand. I don't know that they still are. But where'd it go? Right here. So that's what their stores used to look like. Okay? Probably up until maybe the early 2000s. And so they did a lot of research into store redesign. Is it worth it for them to shift from that model to more of, this kind of model? And it did. It really changed the image of the store, changed what customers thought of them, and was a very successful, I think, for the most part, store redesign. Okay, the ROI on it was high. Okay, let's move on because we're almost out of time. So long story short, habitual decision-making happens all the time. And there's a bunch of different decision shortcuts that customers can use. You can think of decision shortcuts or heuristics as rules of thumb or if-then statements. So if a product has this, then it means that. Okay? And I'll give you one example and then I'll wrap it up for today. If we're talking about covariation, when people are selling a used car, what do they do?
Why?
Lie?
Clean it,
What do they do?
clean it.
Okay. John says clean it. When you see a used car that's clean, what do you infer?
It's better taken care of.
Kevin says it's taken care of, what?
Trying to hide something.
Okay, he says trying to hide something, but so generally the belief is, oh, if the car looks good, right? It's clean, vacuum, the paint's shiny. So if it looks good, then it was taken care of. Okay, so see the if-then statement? And I'll give you one more with country of origin. If the wine says it comes from France, then what do you infer?
It's gonna cost more money.
It's gonna cost more money, but it might be of good quality, right? Like so all of these different heuristics, and I'll do a Panopto video on these because like I promised, no official class in person next week, but I'll throw some Panopto videos up there. But these are just simple rules of thumb or decision shortcuts that we use when we're shopping. We see, oh, must be good, throwing it in the basket. Okay? Happens all the time. Okay? We'll end there for today. Have a great rest of your week. For those on the international trip, have a safe trip, make smart decisions, and I will see you, in a couple weeks.